Captain inspects guards, horse guards. Royal Guard, King's Guard, Horse, London, 2024. Captain James Thornton stepped off the black London taxi onto the cobbled streets near Horse Guards Parade, taking a moment to adjust his crisp uniform and smooth back his neatly combed hair. The city was waking slowly. The distant hum of early buses and the faint clatter of horse hooves echoed through the quiet streets. Thornton's eyes scanned the parade ground ahead, where the day's events would unfold, and he felt a mixture of anticipation and calm responsibility. This was a routine inspection, yet each one carried a weight of tradition that stretched back centuries. The Horse Guards Parade, in all its grandeur, looked even more impressive in the early morning light. The broad square, lined with elegant buildings of pale stone, seemed almost to hold its breath. Flags fluttered gently in the breeze atop the nearby towers, and the sunlight reflected off polished brass buttons and the well-kept harnesses of the horses. Thornton's eyes followed a troop of mounted guards as they prepared to form the ceremonial line. Each horse, sleek and strong, pawed at the cobblestones impatiently, steam rising from their nostrils in the crisp air. The guards moved with a quiet precision that came from long hours of training, their boots tapping rhythmically against the ground, synchronized almost perfectly as they guided their mounts into position. As he walked toward the assembled soldiers, Thornton noted the little details that most visitors would miss. The guards' red tunics were spotless, every button aligned, the gold braiding catching the light. Their black bearskin hats stood tall, almost impossibly straight, and their faces, though expressionless by duty, were set with a quiet determination. Thornton had inspected these men and women many times before, yet he never stopped noticing the human effort behind the appearance. Every soldier here had dedicated years to mastering the art of discipline, learning to remain calm and poised under scrutiny, whether from a captain, a passing tourist, or the eyes of the monarchy itself. Horses were another matter entirely. Unlike the soldiers who could maintain composure through sheer willpower and practice, the animals required understanding, patience, and trust. Each horse in the lineup was groomed meticulously, hooves polished, manets brushed, tails neatly tied. The animals were trained to ignore distractions, passing pedestrians, sudden noises, the occasional bird swooping overhead. But each one had a personality, and Thornton knew it only took a moment of inattention to break the delicate balance of order. He moved slowly among them, offering a reassuring nod to the riders, making sure the horses were calm and attentive. Some flicked their ears forward curiously, while others lowered their heads slightly, as if taking in the smells and sounds of the city around them. Thornton's inspection always began with the simplest of tasks, a careful walk along the line of guards, observing, noting, correcting. He had developed a keen eye for the small imperfections that could disrupt an otherwise flawless parade. Today, he noticed a subtle tilt in one soldier's bearskin hat, a slight unevenness in another's boots. These were minor issues, but in a display that represented centuries of royal tradition, small imperfections could be magnified. He made mental notes to address each point, knowing that corrections would be made not with harsh words but with quiet guidance and respect. This was the essence of his role, not just to enforce standards, but to inspire the men and women under his command to meet the high expectations set before them. As he moved further along, Thornton's attention shifted to the overall alignment of the troops. The parade ground, with its wide, open space, required precision in spacing and posture. He observed the distance between each soldier and the next, noting where adjustments would create a more uniform appearance. He checked the horses' positions, ensuring each animal mirrored the stance and alignment of its neighbors. Thornton paused briefly to watch a young guard whisper a soft word to his horse, the animal responding with a gentle nudge of its nose. Moments like these reminded him that beneath the rigid structure and ceremonial discipline, There existed a living connection between human and animal, a partnership forged through patience, trust, and understanding. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Tourists, drawn by the promise of a glimpse at London's ceremonial grandeur, began to trickle onto the edges of the parade ground, cameras in hand. Thornton paid them little mind. His focus was on the guards, the horses, and the integrity of the inspection. He was aware, however, that the public eye was ever present. Each movement, each gesture, contributed to a larger image of tradition, pride, and continuity that London and the monarchy had cultivated for centuries. The presence of onlookers added pressure, but it also reaffirmed the importance of his work. The discipline he demanded, the precision he enforced, served not just the guards themselves, but the legacy of the institution they represented. Thornton stopped at the center of the line, taking a moment to survey the formation as a whole. The rows of red tunics, black boots, and gleaming brass shone under the morning light. The horses, standing tall and alert, seemed almost statuesque, yet there was a subtle energy, a sense that each being was aware, ready, and responsive. He could hear the soft rustle of fabric as guards shifted slightly, the faint nickering of horses, the occasional distant bell from a nearby church. The sounds blended into a quiet symphony of readiness, a backdrop to the discipline and tradition that defined the Horse Guards parade. Walking slowly down the line, Thornton occasionally bent to inspect the finer details. The stitching on a uniform, the shine of a boot, the condition of a horse's harness, each small element mattered. He made careful mental notes, appreciating the effort and commitment behind them. For a moment, his mind wandered to the history of the place, imagining generations of soldiers and officers who had walked these same stones, performed these same rituals, and upheld the same standards. The weight of history was tangible here, grounding the morning in a sense of continuity that transcended the individual. As the inspection continued, Thornton maintained a steady rhythm, moving from one end of the line to the other. He observed the posture of each guard, the steadiness of each horse, and the overall flow of the formation. Occasionally, he offered a quiet word of encouragement or a subtle correction, mindful of the balance between authority and support. He knew that his role was not only to enforce standards, but to nurture confidence and pride among the soldiers. Each nod, each gesture, each careful instruction reinforced the bonds of discipline, tradition, and mutual respect that held the parade together. By the time Thornton reached the final row of guards, the sun had risen fully, bathing the parade ground in warm light. Shadows shortened, the air seemed brighter, and the city around them began to stir more actively. Horses shifted slightly under their riders, the subtle sound of metal and leather mingling with the distant hum of London's morning traffic. Thornton paused for a moment, taking in the scene as a whole, a tableau of precision, dedication, and quiet strength. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that the work of preparation, inspection, and guidance contributed to something greater than any single individual, a living tradition, visible to all who passed through the heart of London. Finally, Thornton straightened, adjusted his coat, and allowed himself a brief, private smile. The inspection was underway, and the soldiers and horses were ready. The morning held promise, not only of the routines and ceremonies that would follow, but of the enduring connection between past and present, human and animal, duty and pride. In this quiet, golden hour, Captain James Thornton felt the full weight and privilege of his role, knowing that in guiding the guards through their morning ritual, he was part of a story much larger than himself, a story that continued, day after day, in the heart of London. After completing his initial walk along the line, Captain James Thornton took a step back and began the formal inspection of the guards. He moved with a calm and measured pace, observing every detail as if nothing escaped his notice. The morning sunlight reflected off polished boots, bright red tunics, and shiny brass buttons, making the entire formation appear almost as if it were carved from the traditions of history itself. Thornton's eyes, trained over years of experience, scanned for even the smallest flaw: the tilt of a hat, the alignment of a belt, or the posture of a soldier. Each tiny imperfection was a thread that, if left unchecked, could weaken the fabric of ceremonial discipline. He began with the front row. The soldiers' expressions were unwavering, eyes fixed forward, bodies rigid but poised. Thornton noted the subtle tension in their muscles, the careful way they balanced on the uneven cobblestones, and the perfect stillness of their hands resting against their rifles. He approached one of the younger guards, a man barely out of his 20s, and crouched slightly to examine the stitching on his tunic. The uniform was almost perfect, but Thornton noticed a small crease near the shoulder seam. With a gentle tap on the fabric, he signaled the soldier to adjust it later, a reminder that perfection was a continuous effort, not a final destination. Next, Thornton turned his attention to the horses. He walked slowly between the mounted guards, his eyes traveling from polished hooves to neatly braided manets. Each horse carried a calm dignity, standing perfectly still despite the growing number of onlookers gathering at the edges of the parade ground. Thornton had always admired the relationship between rider and horse. It was a partnership built on trust, patience, and understanding. He paused at a majestic black stallion, noting the animal's alert ears and steady breathing. He nodded to the rider, acknowledging the hours of preparation and training it took to reach this level of synchronization between horse and rider. Thornton's inspection was more than a visual assessment. It was a careful evaluation of the discipline and readiness of both human and animal. He observed how each guard held the reins, how lightly the horse shifted its weight, and how the soldiers' breathing remained controlled despite the stillness required of them. Even a small sign of nervousness or hesitation could indicate the need for further training or guidance. Thornton moved from one end of the line to the other, noting the harmony in the formation. The guards' precision reflected the countless hours of practice, the repeated drills, and the strict adherence to tradition that defined the King's Guard. As he walked, Thornton occasionally gave brief instructions. A quiet word here, a gentle nod there, nothing loud or harsh, but enough to remind the soldiers that he was observing, evaluating, and guiding. One guard had slightly uneven boots, and Thornton motioned for him to adjust them. Another had a small crease in the trousers, which was quickly smoothed out. Thornton believed that leadership was not about shouting orders, but about demonstrating respect, setting high standards, and guiding others toward excellence. The guards responded not out of fear, but out of pride and commitment to the centuries-old traditions they upheld. While inspecting, Thornton also noticed the subtle ways the horses reacted to the environment. A bird landed on a nearby lamppost, causing one horse to flick its tail and lift its head slightly. Thornton watched calmly, waiting for the animal to regain composure. When the horse's rider gently spoke to it, the animal settled once more, demonstrating the connection and communication between horse and human. It was a delicate balance, and Thornton understood that every aspect of this inspection mattered, from the alignment of uniforms to the steadiness of the horses under pressure. The formation extended down the entire parade ground, and Thornton's gaze moved from soldier to soldier, horse to horse, ensuring that the ceremony's integrity was maintained. He observed the symmetry in the rows, the even spacing, and the posture of each participant. Small details, like the angle of a rifle or the tilt of a shoulder, could disrupt the visual harmony if left unchecked. Thornton paused frequently, taking note of areas requiring minor corrections and silently commending those who displayed exceptional discipline. His presence was a reminder that every action, no matter how small, contributed to the grandeur and dignity of the Horse Guards parade. As the inspection progressed, Thornton reflected on the human side of the display. Each guard had a story, a journey of dedication, discipline, and sacrifice. Some had trained for years in military academies, while others had spent their lives perfecting their horsemanship. Thornton admired their commitment, understanding that the public often saw only the surface, the polished tunics, the straight lines, and the shining boots. Few realized the effort behind the scenes, the early mornings, the rigorous drills, and the unwavering focus required to maintain such precision. For Thornton, the inspection was as much about recognizing and honoring that dedication as it was about enforcing standards. By mid-morning, the parade ground had grown livelier. Tourists and Londoners lined the edges, capturing photographs and watching silently, fascinated by the disciplined display. Thornton moved with calm authority, aware of the eyes upon him but never distracted. He understood that the guards' performance reflected not only their training, but also the reputation of the institution they represented. Every adjustment he made, every instruction he offered, was a small contribution to the continuity of a tradition that stretched back centuries. The balance between strict discipline and human understanding was delicate, and Thornton navigated it with practiced skill. At one point, Thornton stopped at a section where the horses seemed slightly restless. He observed quietly, noting the subtle shifts in weight and posture. One rider gently reassured the horse with a soft word, and the animal responded almost immediately, returning to its calm stance. Thornton appreciated these interactions, knowing that the ability to maintain composure under unexpected circumstances was a testament to the training and trust between guard and horse. It was a living demonstration of harmony, patience, and professionalism. Thornton also took care to ensure that the guards remained mindful of their surroundings. The cobblestones were uneven in places, and the early morning sunlight created patches of glare that could distract the soldiers or horses. He adjusted the formation slightly, ensuring that both humans and animals were positioned for maximum stability and comfort. These small interventions were part of a broader philosophy. The parade was not merely about ceremony, but about respect for the tradition, for the public, and for the individuals and animals participating. As the inspection continued, Thornton observed the soldiers' faces closely. Even the slightest sign of fatigue, distraction, or discomfort was noted for later discussion and training. He knew that maintaining focus during long ceremonies was challenging, requiring both physical endurance and mental discipline. He moved along the line with a quiet authority, offering encouragement where needed and corrections where appropriate. The guards responded instinctively, a result of rigorous training, mutual respect, and their shared pride in the institution they served. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only a part of the morning, Thornton reached the far end of the parade ground. He stepped back and surveyed the entire formation, his eyes traveling across rows of red tunics, polished boots, and alert horses. The soldiers stood tall, their posture unwavering, the horses calm and composed. Thornton felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The inspection had revealed both the strengths and the small areas for improvement, and he knew that with minor adjustments, the formation would be perfect. More importantly, the human spirit behind the discipline, dedication, pride, and respect, shone through clearly. The captain took a final walk along the edge of the formation, nodding quietly to soldiers, acknowledging the riders, and observing the subtle ways the horses responded to their environment. The morning sun had climbed higher, warming the cobblestones and casting long shadows that shifted with the movement of the parade. Thornton knew that this inspection, like every other, was a small but vital part of preserving the tradition, honor, and dignity of the Horse Guards. Each step, each glance, Each quiet instruction was a contribution to a story that extended far beyond the present moment. By the time Thornton concluded this part of the inspection, the parade ground was alive with a quiet energy. Soldiers remained alert, horses poised, and the public watching in respectful fascination. Thornton allowed himself a brief pause to take in the scene, appreciating the harmony of human effort, animal training, and historical tradition. He understood that the inspection was more than an evaluation. It was a celebration of discipline, a tribute to centuries of history, and a reminder that excellence was achieved through dedication, patience, and respect. With a deep breath, Captain James Thornton straightened his coat, adjusted his hat, and prepared to move on to the next stage of his work. The morning's inspection had set the tone for the day, reinforcing the standards of precision and discipline that define the King's Guard. Yet more importantly, it reminded him of the living, breathing effort behind the polished exterior, a combination of skill, dedication, and pride that ensured the tradition would continue, strong and vibrant in the heart of London. After finishing the careful inspection of the soldiers and their horses, Captain James Thornton gathered the guards together in a formation near the center of the parade ground. The sun had risen higher now, casting a golden glow over the cobblestones and the rows of red tunics. Thornton's presence commanded attention, but it was not the kind that relied on fear or strictness alone. Instead, it was a presence built on respect, experience, and quiet authority. The soldiers, standing tall and still, waited attentively, eyes focused forward, ready to listen to the guidance of the man who had walked the line with such care and precision. Thornton began speaking, his voice calm but firm, carrying easily across the open space. He reminded the guards of the importance of tradition, of the history they represented, and of the honor of being chosen to serve in the King's Guard. He spoke of the discipline required, not as a punishment or obligation, but as a mark of pride, proof of the skill, patience, and dedication that each guard brought to the role. Thornton wanted the soldiers to feel the significance of their duties, to understand that every gesture, every stance, and every movement contributed to a living story that stretched back through centuries of London's history. He moved slowly among the soldiers, pausing occasionally to make eye contact or offer a quiet word of encouragement. Some of the younger guards seemed nervous, their eyes flicking to their comrades or to the assembled horses. Thornton noticed this and took the moment to reassure them. "The strength of this formation," he said, "comes not just from the discipline of each individual, but from the trust and teamwork between all of you. Every gesture, no matter how small, carries the weight of history." His words were simple, but they resonated deeply, reminding the guards that their role was about more than appearance. It was about legacy, professionalism, and shared pride. As Thornton spoke, he highlighted the unique challenge of combining human and equine precision. The horses, magnificent and strong, required careful handling and constant attention. The guards had spent months, even years, developing the connection needed to guide their animals through ceremonies without distraction. Thornton praised the riders, noting how well they had maintained control during the inspection and how their steady presence helped the horses remain calm. He pointed out that the partnership between horse and rider was a living example of patience, respect, and understanding, and it deserved recognition as much as the soldiers' own discipline. The captain also took a moment to remind the guards that they represented not only the King's Guard, but the city itself. London was a city rich in history and culture, and the public looked to the parade as a symbol of tradition, continuity, and pride. Thornton explained that even small lapses in composure or precision could diminish the impression of the ceremony, and while perfection was the goal, awareness and presence of mind were equally important. The soldiers listened intently, their faces calm and focused, absorbing his guidance while reflecting on their own training and experiences. Thornton shifted his focus to the younger recruits, some of whom were experiencing their first formal inspection under his command. He walked along the line, pausing to demonstrate small adjustments, how to hold the reins just slightly differently, how to balance a posture over the uneven cobblestones, how to adjust a glove or smooth a crease in a tunic. Each demonstration was deliberate, clear, and patient. Thornton believed that leadership was as much about showing as it was about telling. By modeling the correct behavior, he provided a visual guide that the soldiers could replicate, helping them internalize the standards of the parade without feeling pressured or criticized. The public had begun to gather more densely at the edges of the parade ground, forming quiet rows of observers. Cameras clicked softly, and occasional whispers of admiration floated through the air. Thornton remained focused, aware that every action was being observed, yet undistracted. He knew that the Guards' performance was a living display of London's tradition, one that required both attention to detail and an understanding of the symbolic weight carried by their appearance. The soldiers, aware of the audience, maintained their discipline, demonstrating the quiet professionalism that the captain had praised. At one point, Thornton paused in front of a small group of young recruits who seemed uncertain about the precision expected of them. He crouched slightly, bringing himself to eye level, and spoke in a quiet, steady voice. "Remember," he said, "discipline is not about stiffness or fear. It's about focus, awareness, and respect for yourself, your comrades, and the tradition you uphold. You are part of something much larger than any one of us, and every step, every posture, every glance matters." The soldiers nodded, absorbing the advice with a seriousness that reflected their commitment to the role they had chosen. He also reminded the Guards of the importance of consistency. Each movement, each adjustment, each interaction with their horses or fellow soldiers needed to be repeated with care and attention. Thornton explained that ceremonies were not only about spectacle, they were about demonstrating reliability, respect for tradition, and the ability to maintain composure under observation. The soldiers understood that this consistency was not only for the public, but for themselves, as it built confidence, professionalism, and pride in their own abilities. As the speech continued, Thornton emphasized the human connection behind the uniforms. He spoke of the effort that went into preparation, from the early mornings to the meticulous grooming of both horse and rider. "Each day you spend here," he said, "you contribute to a living history. The public sees the polished tunics and the straight lines, but it is your dedication, your practice, and your respect for tradition that makes this display possible." His words reminded the soldiers that their work, while disciplined and precise, was also meaningful and impactful. The captain then drew attention to the subtle interactions between soldiers and their horses. He noted how a gentle touch on the reins could calm an alert animal, or how a quiet word could maintain focus during long hours of standing in formation. Thornton highlighted these moments as examples of leadership, patience, and mutual respect. The soldiers listened closely, understanding that mastery of their role required attention not only to themselves, but also to the living beings they worked with. Each horse was unique, and the bond between rider and animal was central to the success of the parade. Thornton concluded his address by encouraging reflection. He asked the soldiers to consider their own progress, their commitment, and the impact of their actions on the tradition they upheld. He reminded them that pride in their work came not only from public recognition, but also from personal achievement, attention to detail, and respect for the history they represented. The soldiers stood quietly, absorbing the weight of his words, their focus sharpened and their sense of purpose renewed. As the Guards began to return to their positions, Thornton walked slowly among them again, offering final words of encouragement. He observed how well the soldiers carried themselves after his speech, noting the subtle changes in posture, confidence, and awareness. The young recruits appeared more assured, the experienced soldiers more focused, and the horses calm and responsive. Thornton knew that the morning's guidance had strengthened both the formation and the morale of the guards. The public remained on the edges of the parade ground, some taking notes, some photographing the scene, all quietly watching as the guards prepared for the next stage of the day's activities. Thornton understood that every gesture, every adjustment, every quiet instruction contributed to the overall impression of order and excellence. The soldiers were not only performing for the captain or their superiors, they were part of a living tradition, representing centuries of history, pride, and discipline in the heart of London. By mid-morning, the parade ground was fully alive with energy, yet calm and controlled. Thornton observed the subtle rhythm of the soldiers and their horses. The way movement and stillness blended seamlessly into a larger display of professionalism and precision. He appreciated the effort required to maintain this level of excellence, knowing that it was a combination of human dedication, animal training, and careful leadership that made it possible. Each soldier and each horse contributed to the beauty and significance of the parade, and Thornton felt a sense of pride in their collective achievement. Finally, Thornton allowed himself a quiet moment to reflect. He watched as the soldiers resumed their formal positions, the horses standing tall and alert, and the public observing in respectful silence. He considered the importance of his role, not only as an inspector, but also as a mentor and guide, someone who helped preserve the integrity, discipline, and tradition of the King's Guard. The morning's work had reinforced standards, strengthened confidence, and reminded everyone involved of the significance of their duties. With a calm and measured step, Thornton walked along the edge of the parade ground, his eyes taking in the full scene. The sunlight reflected off the polished boots, the shining buttons, and the alert eyes of the horses. The parade was ready for whatever ceremonies or events the day might bring. Thornton felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that the soldiers had not only met his expectations, but had also internalized the lessons of pride, respect, and discipline he had shared. The legacy of the King's Guard continued, upheld by the dedication and professionalism of those standing before him. The morning had been long and meticulous, but Thornton knew that every moment of preparation mattered. Every instruction, every adjustment, every word of encouragement contributed to the success of the day and the continuation of centuries of tradition. He allowed himself a brief, private smile, appreciating the harmony, discipline, and human effort that had transformed the parade ground into a living testament to history, pride, and skill. As the morning progressed, Captain James Thornton continued to oversee the parade ground, walking slowly along the lines of guards and mounted soldiers. The sun was higher now, casting sharp light across the polished brass buttons and red tunics. The cobblestones shimmered in the warm light, and the air carried the faint smell of hay and leather from the stabled horses. Thornton's eyes, trained to notice even the smallest detail, scanned every row, every horse, every soldier. He had already guided the guards through inspection and encouragement, but he knew that the day was far from over. Ceremonial work always held the potential for unexpected challenges, and it was his responsibility to anticipate them calmly and decisively. As he observed, Thornton noticed that one of the horses in the middle of the line shifted nervously. Its ears flicked back, and its tail twitched slightly. A passing cyclist on a nearby street had caught its attention, and although the animal remained mostly calm, Thornton recognized the importance of addressing the situation immediately. He approached the rider, a young guard who had been under his supervision for only a few months, and nodded in reassurance. "Keep your posture steady and maintain a gentle hold on the reins," he said quietly. "The horse senses your calm." Your focus will help it stay composed." The young guard straightened instinctively, and the horse gradually relaxed, its breathing slowing as the tension eased. This small incident reminded Thornton of the unpredictable nature of working with animals. Unlike soldiers, who could rely entirely on discipline and training, horses reacted to the world around them in ways that required sensitivity, understanding, and patience. Thornton moved slowly along the line, observing the subtle interactions between rider and horse. He noted how the gentle pressure of a rein or the soft words of reassurance could calm an anxious animal, maintaining the perfect appearance of composure expected in public ceremonies. It was a delicate balance, and one that required both skill and empathy. Meanwhile, the formation of soldiers remained attentive, their eyes forward, faces composed. Thornton had emphasized that discipline was about more than standing still. It was about maintaining focus, presence, and professionalism in the face of distractions. The small disturbance caused by the passing cyclist became a teaching moment. Thornton spoke to the guards in a low voice, careful not to disturb the public observing from the edges of the parade ground. "Ceremonial duty requires readiness at all times," he explained. "Even when something unexpected occurs, you must remain poised. It is not just a matter of appearance. It reflects your training, your discipline, and the respect you hold for tradition." The young recruits listened closely, absorbing the lesson with a seriousness that reflected their growing understanding of the responsibilities before them. Thornton walked among them slowly, noting their reactions and offering encouragement where needed. He emphasized that mistakes were not failures if handled correctly. "The way you respond to challenges defines you more than the challenge itself," he said. "A small disruption does not ruin the ceremony if you manage it with calm and precision." The guards nodded, internalizing the message as they maintained their positions with renewed focus. Thornton's attention returned to the horses. He moved along the line, observing how each animal responded to the presence of spectators, distant noises, and subtle movements in the parade ground. One particularly tall horse lifted its head slightly at the sound of a distant horn, but the rider's steady posture and gentle words quickly restored calm. Thornton paused, allowing the young soldier to see that even seasoned horses could show brief signs of alertness, and that composure and skill were the keys to managing such situations. The demonstration served as a reminder that ceremonial duty was as much about adaptability as it was about strict precision. The public, meanwhile, continued to watch silently, capturing photographs and videos, murmuring quietly among themselves. Thornton was aware of their presence, but he remained focused entirely on the guards and horses. Every gesture, every glance, every posture contributed to the living image of tradition they were presenting. He knew that visitors often saw only the surface, the polished boots, the straight lines, the gleaming buttons, but the effort, preparation, and responsiveness behind the display were far more complex. It was the combination of discipline, awareness, and empathy that created the seamless performance expected of the King's Guard. At one point, a small group of tourists approached the edge of the parade ground a little too closely, and a horse near them shifted nervously. Thornton's quick response was both calm and decisive. He signaled the guard to maintain position, while subtly guiding the horse's attention back to the formation. With gentle words and a steady posture, the rider calmed the animal, and the line remained undisturbed. Thornton used the moment to reinforce the importance of awareness and preparation. "In public ceremonies, you will face distractions," he explained. "Your ability to remain composed, to anticipate reactions, and to guide your horse calmly ensures the dignity of the formation." The lesson resonated with the guards, particularly the younger recruits who were still learning the rhythms of ceremonial duty. Thornton walked among them, observing subtle changes in posture and focus. he emphasized the value of mindfulness, being fully aware of the surroundings, the animals, and one's own body at all times. He reminded them that maintaining composure was not only about appearance, but about safety, control, and the demonstration of professionalism to the public. Every detail mattered, from the angle of a boot to the positioning of a hand on the reins. As the morning continued, Thornton guided the guards through minor adjustments. Some soldiers corrected small misalignments in their stance, while others smoothed creases in their uniforms. The horses were checked for calmness and readiness, with riders making slight adjustments to ensure their mounts remained composed. Thornton praised the soldiers quietly, reinforcing the connection between effort and excellence. "Your attention to detail preserves the dignity of the King's Guard," he said. "Every small action contributes to the tradition we uphold." Despite the minor disruptions, the parade ground remained a place of order, discipline, and controlled energy. Thornton moved methodically, observing, correcting, and encouraging, ensuring that every guard and horse maintained focus. He reflected on the balance required for ceremonial duty, discipline combined with flexibility, tradition combined with responsiveness, and human skill combined with animal cooperation. It was this balance that made the Horse Guards Parade not only a symbol of history, but also a living, breathing display of dedication, professionalism, and pride. Thornton also took a moment to reflect on the learning opportunities for the younger soldiers. He encouraged them to pay attention to subtle cues from their horses, the positioning of their fellow guards, and the reactions of the public. "The smallest observation can prevent a larger issue," he explained. "By being aware, by responding calmly and confidently, you contribute to a flawless performance and a proud tradition." The recruits listened attentively, internalizing the lessons while observing the example set by the experienced soldiers and their captain. As the morning progressed, the city of London became busier, yet the parade ground remained a calm island of discipline and focus. Thornton appreciated the dedication of the soldiers and the partnership with their horses. He walked slowly along the line, observing the subtle adjustments in posture, the careful handling of reins, and the unwavering attention to detail. Even when minor distractions occurred, the formation remained strong, a testament to training, preparation, and the quiet authority of leadership. Finally, after what had been a meticulous and eventful morning, Thornton took a step back to observe the entire formation. The guards stood tall, the horses calm and composed, and the parade ground organized and orderly. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that despite the minor disruptions, the soldiers had maintained discipline and professionalism. The morning's challenges had served as teaching moments, reinforcing the importance of composure, awareness, and teamwork. Thornton understood that these experiences strengthened both the individual guards and the collective formation, ensuring the continued excellence of the King's Guard. With a calm exhale, Thornton allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had guided the guards through inspection, mentoring, and minor challenges, and the parade ground now radiated order, poise, and readiness. The public continued to observe quietly, impressed by the precision and harmony of the display. Thornton knew that ceremonial duty required constant vigilance, patience, and adaptability, and he felt confident that the soldiers and their horses had met these demands admirably. As the morning came to a close, Thornton walked along the edge of the formation, nodding to the guards and acknowledging the riders. He appreciated the subtle moments, the way a horse responded to a gentle word, the steady hands of a soldier maintaining alignment, the quiet focus of the younger recruits gaining confidence under his guidance. These moments, seemingly small, were the essence of ceremonial excellence. They reflected the dedication, skill, and respect that made the Horse Guards Parade a living tradition, admired by both the public and the soldiers themselves. Finally, Thornton straightened his coat, adjusted his hat, and allowed himself a quiet smile. The formation was strong, the soldiers attentive, and the horses calm. The morning had tested their skills, patience, and discipline, but all had risen to the occasion. Thornton felt a profound sense of satisfaction, knowing that the legacy of the King's Guard would continue through the dedication and professionalism of those standing before him. The day's challenges had been met with calm authority, respect, and pride, ensuring that the parade ground remained a symbol of tradition and excellence in the heart of London. As the day progressed, the activities at Horse Guards Parade began to wind down, yet Captain James Thornton remained vigilant, walking slowly along the lines of soldiers and mounted guards. The morning's inspection and mentoring had been completed, and the formation now carried a quiet, confident energy. The sunlight had shifted, softening as it began to descend in the early afternoon sky, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Thornton took a moment to observe the scene as a whole. The precise alignment of the guards, the calm demeanor of the horses, and the steady rhythm of the soldiers' breathing. Every element reflected the hours of dedication, training, and focus that had been invested by both humans and animals alike. Thornton paused near the center of the parade ground, taking in the entirety of the formation. The guards' polished boots glinted in the sunlight, their red tunics and black bearskin hats standing in sharp contrast to the soft tones of the surrounding buildings. The horses, tall and majestic, shifted subtly as they stood attentive, their ears flicking occasionally in response to distant city sounds. Thornton felt a sense of pride as he observed the harmony of the formation. It was a living testament to discipline, professionalism, and centuries of tradition preserved in the heart of London. He walked along the rows, nodding to individual guards and offering quiet encouragement where needed. Even after the morning's disruptions, every soldier maintained composure, demonstrating the strength of their training and their commitment to the ceremony. Thornton knew that true excellence in the King's Guard came not only from skill, but also from the ability to remain calm and confident under observation. He observed how the soldiers handled minor fatigue and distractions, noting the small ways they maintained their focus and poise. This, he thought, was the essence of ceremonial mastery, the quiet strength that allowed a person to perform flawlessly even when the world moved unpredictably around them. As he moved among the mounted guards, Thornton considered the bond between each soldier and their horse. These animals were more than instruments of ceremony. They were partners, trained over months and years to respond to subtle cues, to remain calm in the face of noise and movement, and to carry their riders with dignity and composure. Thornton watched as a tall chestnut horse adjusted its stance slightly at the sound of a distant bell, only to return to calm under the gentle guidance of its rider. He smiled to himself, appreciating the delicate balance between discipline, training, and empathy required to maintain this level of performance. The captain reflected on the significance of the parade beyond the immediate spectacle. Tourists and Londoners might see only the visual precision, the alignment of the guards, the polished boots, the gleaming buttons. But behind that surface was a story of dedication, patience, and history. Every guard on the parade ground had invested countless hours into mastering posture, drills, and horsemanship. Every horse had undergone training to remain alert yet calm, responsive yet controlled. Thornton understood that the true measure of success lay not in the applause of onlookers, but in the quiet confidence and competence displayed by both soldiers and animals alike. He approached a small group of young recruits who had shown notable improvement throughout the morning. Thornton crouched slightly to bring himself to their eye level and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Today, you've shown what it means to be part of the King's Guard," he said. "It's not just about standing tall or keeping your horse steady. It's about awareness, respect, and pride in what you do. Each small decision, every subtle adjustment, contributes to the greater tradition we uphold. Remember, the legacy of the King's Guard depends on your dedication, both now and in the years to come. The recruits nodded, absorbing his words with quiet determination. Thornton then moved to observe the formation as a whole, noting the flow and rhythm that had developed over the morning. Soldiers shifted subtly in unison, horses mirrored their riders' steadiness, and the entire parade ground felt like a single, cohesive entity. He reflected on the importance of teamwork in achieving this effect. Individual skill was essential, but it was the synchronization of all participants, the human and the animal, that created the seamless, dignified performance expected of the King's Guard. Thornton admired how well the soldiers had internalized this principle, responding instinctively to his guidance and to the behavior of their horses. A few minor distractions occurred as pedestrians passed near the edges of the parade ground, but each was handled calmly and efficiently. One horse turned its head slightly at a sudden sound, prompting its rider to adjust posture and rein subtly. Another guard, noticing a small misalignment in the row, shifted his stance almost imperceptibly, restoring the formation's symmetry. Thornton observed quietly, recognizing these small acts of attentiveness as evidence of the guard's growing skill and confidence. Each corrective action, though subtle, contributed to the overall dignity and effectiveness of the ceremony. As the afternoon sunlight softened, Thornton allowed himself a brief moment to reflect on the continuity of the tradition he was helping to maintain. The King's Guard had existed for centuries, adapting to changes in society and the city while preserving its core values of discipline, respect, and professionalism. Each guard on the parade ground was part of this living history, embodying the principles passed down through generations. Thornton understood that his role was not only to enforce standards, but also to nurture these qualities in the soldiers, ensuring that the legacy of the parade would continue with integrity and pride. He walked along the perimeter, observing the small details that contributed to the overall impression of excellence. A polished boot catching the sunlight, a perfectly aligned belt, a subtle nod of reassurance between rider and horse. Each detail reinforced the impression of calm, competence, and tradition. Thornton appreciated these moments, knowing that they were the culmination of countless hours of training, preparation, and attention to detail. He felt a quiet satisfaction in seeing the results of his guidance reflected in the poised, confident behavior of the soldiers and the responsive, calm demeanor of the horses. Thornton also considered the public's perspective. From their vantage point, the parade was a flawless display of order, discipline, and grandeur. Yet behind the visual perfection lay the human effort, the subtle interactions, and the training that made it possible. Thornton thought about how the soldiers' dedication reflected the values of the institution they represented, and how the respect and care they showed their horses spoke to a broader principle of responsibility and stewardship. The parade was not just a ceremonial event. It was a living example of professionalism, history, and mutual respect between human and animal. As the day wore on, Thornton encouraged the guards to take moments of quiet reflection while maintaining their positions. "Even in stillness you are learning," he reminded them. "Pay attention to your posture, your breathing, and your awareness of the world around you. Every small improvement matters." Discipline is not a moment, it is a practice, a continuous journey toward excellence. The soldiers absorbed this guidance, mindful of the subtleties that distinguished ordinary performance from true mastery. Thornton observed the younger recruits as they completed small adjustments with growing confidence. Their hands were steadier, their posture more assured, and their interactions with their horses more fluid. It was a visible sign of the effectiveness of his mentoring and the dedication of the recruits themselves. Thornton felt a deep sense of pride, knowing that these young soldiers would carry the lessons of today into future ceremonies, maintaining the standard of excellence required by the King's Guard. The afternoon air was calm, with a gentle breeze that moved through the parade ground. Thornton took a slow, deliberate walk along the edge, surveying the formation one final time. The guards stood tall and composed, their horses calm and alert, and the public continued to watch respectfully from the sidelines. Thornton reflected on the significance of his role, not just as an inspector, but as a mentor, guide, and preserver of tradition. Every instruction, every correction, every word of encouragement had contributed to the performance, ensuring that the parade remained a symbol of history, discipline, and pride. Finally, as the sun began its descent, Thornton allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The formation was strong, the soldiers attentive, and the horses steady. The challenges of the morning had been met with professionalism and calm, and the lessons imparted had been absorbed and applied. Thornton knew that this day, like every day on the parade ground, would contribute to the continued legacy of the King's Guard, upheld through dedication, respect, and skill. He walked slowly along the perimeter once more, acknowledging each guard with a subtle nod, appreciating the quiet moments of excellence, and reflecting on the broader meaning of the ceremony. The public, now fewer in number but still present, observed the final moments with admiration, unaware of the detailed preparation and subtle guidance that had made the performance possible. Thornton understood that the parade was more than a display. It was a living story of discipline, human-animal partnership, and historical continuity. As the day concluded, Thornton gathered the soldiers briefly to offer final words of praise and encouragement. He highlighted the calm handling of disruptions, the steady attention to detail, and the respect shown to both tradition and public observation. "You have demonstrated the values of the King's Guard today," he said. "Discipline, awareness, and pride are not just words, they are actions that define us. Carry these lessons forward and continue to honor the tradition we serve." The soldiers stood silently, absorbing his words, their faces reflecting quiet pride and renewed confidence. With that, Thornton allowed the guards to return to their routine duties, horses moving gracefully as riders led them to rest areas. The parade ground gradually emptied of public spectators, the city resuming its normal rhythm around the quiet space that had, for hours, been a center of precision, history, and pride. Thornton took a final walk across the cobblestones, observing the lasting impression of the day's work. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that the legacy of the King's Guard was secure, maintained through the skill, dedication, and professionalism of those who had stood before him. As the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parade ground, Thornton reflected on the enduring significance of the tradition he had helped guide that day. The soldiers, the horses, and the formation as a whole were more than a display. They were a living testament to history, discipline, and shared pride. Thornton allowed himself a quiet smile, appreciating the quiet victories, the learning moments, and the continued excellence of the King's Guard. The day had been long, exacting, and full of small challenges, yet each had been met with calm authority and unwavering professionalism. In the heart of London, the parade ground now stood serene, echoing with the lessons, effort, and dedication of the day. Thornton knew that tomorrow would bring new inspections, new challenges, and new opportunities to uphold tradition. Yet he also understood that the work done today had strengthened both the soldiers and the legacy of the King's Guard. As he stepped away from the parade ground, Thornton felt a sense of quiet pride, knowing that the story of discipline, dedication, and excellence would continue, carried forward by those who had learned, observed, and contributed that day.